CEO mocked the black security guard. 5 hours later, he saved the company from a 200 million hack. You're just a body with a badge. Let the real men handle cybersecurity. That's what the CEO said, loud, smug, and certain, as the company's entire digital infrastructure collapsed. Clients screaming, millions vanishing, and every expert in the building frozen with fear. But the black security guard he mocked, he walked into the server room, typed for less than 2 minutes, and saved everything. No job title, no fancy suit, just the man who built the very system they failed to protect. And the kicker, the same man they framed and erased 10 years ago. This isn't just a redemption story, it's a reckoning. And it all started with one arrogant mistake, underestimating the wrong man. If you've ever been judged by your uniform, your skin, or the silence you carry, this story will hit home. Because what you're about to witness isn't just payback, it's poetic justice at its finest. So don't just watch, join the fight. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and tell us in the comments, have you ever been underestimated, like Malcolm? Because the world needs to hear your story too. Let's make sure no genius ever gets dismissed as just a guard again. Malcolm Reed didn't always wear a security badge. A decade ago, his name was spoken with reverence in every cybersecurity summit from Berlin to Boston. By 28, he'd created the Red Spire Protocol, a defensive architecture so advanced it was adopted by 3 Fortune 100 firms and quietly licensed by the Pentagon. But you won't find his name on those patents anymore. Why? Because his co-founder, a man named Ethan Vale, sold their creation, framed Malcolm for the breach, and walked away with the credit and the billions. The media branded Malcolm a traitor. Investors vanished overnight. Even his closest colleagues looked at him differently, like they didn't know him anymore. His mugshot flashed on screens across America, while the real thief grinned on magazine covers labeled Tech Visionary of the Year. The trial never came. No charges, just whispers, silence, and a broken reputation. By the time the truth began to surface, no one cared. Tech had moved on, but Malcolm hadn't. He changed his name, shaved his head, moved across the country, and took the only job that didn't require a background check. Overnight security guard at Core Vantage Inc., the very company now running a warped version of the code he wrote in a coffee-stained notebook back in college. Every night, Malcolm stood behind bulletproof glass, watching entitled execs stroll past without a glance. He listened to them discuss upgrades to a system they barely understood, watched interns butcher versions of his algorithms in team meetings. He said nothing, but he noticed everything. The CEO, Preston Vale, Ethan's younger brother, was the worst. Harvard tie, charisma on command, and a mouth that couldn't stay closed. He threw around phrases like meritocracy while mocking janitors, interns, and yes, especially Malcolm. You know, we pay guards to look serious, not think, he once joked in front of a room full of laughing engineers. Malcolm didn't flinch. He'd heard worse. But last Friday, when the breach began and chaos swept through the building like fire through dry leaves, Preston made his final mistake. He underestimated the ghost in the system. Again, it started with a flicker, barely noticeable. The elevator display went black. Then the lights in the West Wing blinked twice before stabilizing. Within 60 seconds, every door using biometric locks froze. Desktops rebooted. Monitors glitched. And the worst part? The company's encrypted client database, worth over $200 million, was inaccessible. Inside the 26th floor executive boardroom, the atmosphere turned from smug to suffocating. Preston Vale burst in mid-call, red-faced and sweating, barking orders no one could follow. Engineers scrambled. Leads panicked. The system they swore was unbreachable had just fallen apart in real time. Across the security feed, Malcolm watched chaos unfold. Calm, observant, a silent presence beneath fluorescent lights. He recognized the pattern, not just the breach, but the signature, how the virus tunneled through redundant backups, the compression method, the logic tree. It wasn't just familiar, it was his. The system was being dismantled by someone using a corrupted version of Red Spire, the very protocol Malcolm had built, and only someone who had access to the original code could have weaponized it like this. He grabbed his personal notebook. Inside it, sketches of emergency overrides he'd once theorized but never shared. The kind of fail-safes that no current engineer could guess even existed. He reached for the intercom to speak with the IT floor. Just a suggestion, a line of code, something to buy time. But before he could speak, Preston's voice echoed across the building-wide system. Do not accept input from unauthorized personnel, especially the security staff. I don't want to hear theories from some guy guarding the front door. Then laughter. Nervous. Ugly. Engineers chuckled because it was safer to laugh with the boss than admit they had no solution. Malcolm returned to silence. His fingers traced over the pages. The back door was wide open. The damage would spread. It wasn't a matter of if. The question was how long until total collapse. Downstairs, Preston paced in front of the monitors, furious at his team, his staff, the universe. Maybe our security guard has some brilliant insights. He scoffed. Maybe he can reboot the firewalls with his flashlight. Or better yet, pray to the cyber gods. The joke landed. Barely. But it was enough. Enough for the team to redirect their humiliation onto Malcolm. One intern even walked up to him hours later and asked if he knew how to spell firewall. Malcolm looked at him without blinking and said, I built it 10 years ago. Before you learned how to spell password. The intern laughed nervously, thought it was a joke. But upstairs, the attack deepened. Servers turned against each other. Internal systems triggered fail-safe shutdowns. External partners cut data lines. Every second, millions hemorrhaged from Core Vantage's reputation. Preston slammed his fist on the boardroom table. I want answers, not excuses. But the truth. They had nothing. And Malcolm had seen enough. In the stillness of the booth, Malcolm opened the drawer beneath his desk. Hidden under an old security log binder was a sleek, matte black laptop, air-gapped, untraceable, and preloaded with diagnostic tools he'd written years ago in his prime. Not for revenge, not even for survival, just in case one day the world would need fixing again. He connected it via a custom encrypted tether to the building's buried maintenance network, an analog relic from before Vale's flashy upgrades, a system no one used anymore. No one, except the man who had once mapped every line of this infrastructure. The data pulsed in. He watched the virus move through pathways only he could have predicted. Whoever was attacking Core Vantage had rewritten Red Spire into a weaponized shell, but it still carried his DNA. It moved like his code, even when twisted. He activated a monitoring script called Ghost Root, a tool he'd buried inside Red Spire long ago, meant to trace suspicious behavior. It pinged instantly. The breach originated from an IP inside the building. The attacker wasn't some faceless hacker in another country. It was internal. Worse, the key signature was tied to a developer account labeled Veil Auth Legacy. Preston? No, he didn't have the skills, but someone close. Someone who had access to the old code. Someone who had probably been coached by Ethan Vale, his former partner, the man who had built this company on Malcolm's stolen brilliance. Malcolm clenched his jaw, not out of rage, but focus. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about a company dangling over a cliff, its survival depending on the very hands it once buried. He opened a new shell and began typing, not to patch the damage, but to trap the saboteur. He mirrored the breach, lured it into a simulation sandbox inside his own laptop. The attacker didn't know it yet, but they were about to walk straight into their own digital confession. With every keystroke, Malcolm annotated the breach logs, matching the stolen snippets to his original code, timestamp by timestamp, line by line, creating an irrefutable blueprint of theft. Enough evidence to bury Ethan, enough to force the board's hand, enough to remind everyone what genius looked like. But he wasn't done. He retrieved a slim USB drive hidden beneath a false panel under his keyboard, a backup of the original, untouched Red Spire architecture. Pure, efficient, flawless. He'd kept it out of pride and pain. He loaded it onto a shadow terminal within Core Vantage's emergency systems, a terminal they didn't even realize still had root access. He smiled, just a little, watching the old interface light up after 10 years, like it had just woken from a long, deep sleep. The trap was set. The proof was saved. The fix was ready. Now all that remained was to step out of the shadows. Malcolm stood, slid the laptop into his worn satchel, and walked, calmly, purposefully, toward the elevator. No uniform could hide the storm building behind his eyes. No title could diminish what he knew he was about to do. On the 26th floor, the air was electric with fear. Preston was mid-rant, berating his top engineer in front of the board's emergency video call. You had one job, Brian. One. And now, the DoD is threatening to revoke our entire contract. Then the elevator dinged. All heads turned. Malcolm stepped out, silent, holding nothing but a laptop and a calm that cut through the noise like a razor. Preston blinked in disbelief. What the hell is the night guard doing up here? No one answered. No one dared. Malcolm walked straight past the executives, past the engineers, toward the terminal that had stumped an entire tech division for 6 hours. One of the interns tried to block him, but he stopped with a single sentence. Touch me, and this entire system dies in 8 minutes. The room froze. Malcolm plugged in his drive. The screen blinked once, then again, and then the command prompt opened by itself. Lines of code began flooding in, elegant, efficient, terrifyingly precise. Not patchwork, not guesswork. A surgical override, a rewrite from the very architecture upward. Brian Hayes, lead engineer, stepped forward, his voice hoarse. That's the real Red Spire. Malcolm didn't turn around. No, that's what Red Spire was before you corrupted it. Preston tried to recover, blustering. You're trespassing. This is a secure floor. I want him out. But before he could finish, every monitor in the room lit up with mirrored screens from Malcolm's laptop, metadata, code annotations, IP traces, and finally, a name, Ethan Vale, logged access through proxy node, injected breach on January 4th, 3:42 a.m. underneath, a time-stamped video of Ethan in a private Zoom call giving instructions to a masked contractor, the smoking gun. The boardroom went silent. Holy shit. Someone whispered. He has everything. Malcolm turned, locking eyes with Preston. I told your brother once, when you build something great, you don't steal it. You protect it. But you both chose easy over earned. Preston's face contorted between rage and panic. This isn't possible. You can't. You're just a. Malcolm cut him off. Calm. Final. I'm the man who built the walls you think you're defending. He pressed enter. Every locked server unlatched. Security systems resynced. The AI firewall rebooted and resecured all external ports. Latency dropped. Stability metrics soared. Within 2 minutes, Core Vantage was not only restored, it was running 34% more efficiently than before. Someone applauded. Then two more. Then the whole engineering floor. But Malcolm wasn't finished. He uploaded the breach report, complete with annotated evidence and legal hashes, to 3 external law firms, the Department of Defense, and an encrypted public archive with a 24-hour unlock timer. Insurance. Witness. He unplugged the drive, handed it to Brian Hayes. You'll want this, or you'll lose the company again in 6 months. Preston stepped forward, desperate now. Wait. Malcolm, you saved us. You're right. I was wrong. Name your price. CTO, equity, back pay, a public apology, whatever you want. Malcolm looked at him for a long, cold second. I want you to remember this moment. When you realized the man you mocked in the lobby held your company in the palm of his hand. He turned to leave. Preston shouted, almost pleading, But why? Why didn't you come forward earlier? Malcolm paused, without turning back. Because it was never about revenge. It was about remembering who I am, and making sure you remember it too. As Malcolm disappeared into the elevator, the silence upstairs cracked open. Board members, now wide-eyed and pale, turned their gaze to Preston. Chairman Whitaker leaned into the mic on the main screen, voice razor sharp. Preston, explain to me how the architect of our entire system has been working the night shift in your lobby for 2 years. Preston stammered. I didn't know. No one knew. He lied on his application, but Whitaker wasn't buying it. You lied to investors. You ignored every warning sign, and you mocked the man who just saved us from federal investigation. He turned to his assistant off-screen. Call an emergency vote. Now. Preston's voice cracked. You can't be serious. I built this company. No, Whitaker said coldly. You stole it, and he just took it back. Minutes later, a decision was broadcast live. Preston Vale was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Across the tech world, the story detonated. The headlines were merciless. Security guard saves. Core Vantage from catastrophic breach. Turns out, he wrote the code. From exile to executive, Malcolm Reed's revenge without violence. The Black Architect. They tried to erase just saved $200 million in silence. The footage went viral. Preston's outburst. Malcolm's calm. The moment Red Spire came back online, every platform replayed it in slow motion, like a digital legend unfolding in real time. Job offers flooded Malcolm's inbox, from Google to DARPA to Elon Musk's private quantum think tank. But he didn't respond to any of them. Back at Core Vantage, something had shifted. The same intern who mocked him stood in front of his empty guard booth the next night, holding a gift-wrapped notebook and a sticky note that read, Thank you for the firewalls and the lesson. Even Brian Hayes, humbled and shaken, submitted a petition to rename the firm's core framework Reed Secure. The world finally knew who built the walls. But Malcolm, he was already planning something else, something bigger, something that had nothing to do with revenge. and everything to do with rebuilding. Some stories scream for vengeance, but this one, it whispered power. Malcolm Reed didn't scream. He didn't beg. He didn't threaten. He let the system fail, and then showed the world who could rebuild it. That's the lesson. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it wears a faded uniform and walks past you, unnoticed, until you need it most. Sometimes the person you laugh at in the lobby is the one who wrote the foundation you're standing on. But deeper than that is this truth. Dignity is a form of defiance. Malcolm didn't fight to be seen. He became so necessary, they had no choice. And when justice came, it wasn't through courtrooms or revenge speeches. It came in the form of competence that could not be ignored. So if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed, don't burn yourself trying to prove your worth. Do what Malcolm did. Build something they can't live without. Malcolm didn't walk away with a corner office, a headline, or a stock bonus. He walked away with something far rarer. His name reclaimed. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a quiet revolution. One man, no platform, no podium, just proof. And in a world obsessed with noise, that kind of power is deafening. So now it's your turn. If you've ever been the ghost in the hallway, the one they don't see until they need saving, drop your story in the comments. Because this space, it's for the underestimated. And if Malcolm's victory lit something in you, hit like, smash subscribe, and share this with someone who's been told they're just anything. Remember, the world doesn't need louder people. It needs stronger foundations. Be one. And if you ever find yourself doubting your worth, rewind this video. Malcolm left the blueprint. The world didn't stop for Malcolm Reed. When the lies spread, when the headlines buried his name under a mountain of betrayal, when doors slammed shut and friends turned silent, time kept moving. He lost years. Not just career years, life years. Birthdays alone, rent paid in cash, conversations avoided, because every "what do you do?" threatened to expose the scar beneath the surface. But through it all, Malcolm held on to one thing. Not rage, not revenge, memory. He remembered what it felt like to solve a problem no one else could even see. He remembered the joy of watching a blank screen bloom into logic and symmetry. He remembered long nights filled with coffee, code, and purpose. The Malcolm they tried to erase never truly vanished. He just got quieter. He got patient. And that's what they never understood. You can exile a man from his office, from his industry, from the headlines, but you can't erase the work. You can't unwrite genius. And you definitely can't stop a mind that remembers who it is. When Preston Vale looked at Malcolm, he saw a uniform, a security guard, a background prop. But what he failed to see was the discipline it takes to survive humiliation without crumbling. The strength required to clock in every night for a company built on your stolen legacy and never flinch. Malcolm didn't need their validation. He needed one shot. And when it came, he didn't burn the building. He saved it because that's who he is. And that's the lesson. Justice doesn't always wear armor. Sometimes it wears silence like steel. You want a comeback story? Stop waiting for apologies. Stop asking to be seen. Start building. Build quietly. Build fully. Build like Malcolm. So when the moment comes, you don't have to shout. You just show them. And when it's done, you walk away. Not for the applause. Not for the title. But because the real victory isn't them knowing your worth. It's you never forgetting it. So the next time someone talks down to you, the next time you're called just, Anything. Just a guard, just a cleaner, just a dropout. Remember Malcolm. Remember the man who rewrote history from the lobby. And remind yourself, you're not here to be accepted. You're here to be undeniable. Now go write your name back into the system. And when they ask, who let you in? You tell them, I never left. You just stopped looking. Some stories aren't told in headlines. They live in late night bus rides, in vending machine dinners, in the ache behind your eyes after another silent shift, wondering if the world will ever remember you beyond the ID tag you wear on your chest. Malcolm's story wasn't about reclaiming a throne. It was about reclaiming himself, about proving that your value doesn't disappear just because someone else refuses to see it, about holding on to truth when your name has been dragged through the mud, about a staying human when the world tries to reduce you to a footnote, a mistake, a ghost. And here's the truth they don't want to say out loud. We live in a world obsessed with surfaces. Suits mean intelligence, titles mean worth, accents mean capability, skin color means trust. And every day, brilliant people walk into buildings where they're underestimated before they even speak. But maybe that's the point of Malcolm's story, to remind us genius doesn't always look the part. It doesn't always come with polished shoes or Ivy League credentials. Sometimes it comes wrapped in grief, in silence, in resilience, forged in the fire of rejection. So if you're watching this and you feel unseen, hold the line. Let them laugh. Let them underestimate, because one day they'll need the system you built. And on that day, you won't need to scream. You'll just sign your name in code. They can't rewrite and walk away, because real power doesn't ask to be recognized. It leaves proof.